I do believe Laura will join us, and I did not hear anything back from Mark either. Oh, there's Mark. There we go.
So it sounds as though Kate already started the recording on this. I don't know if you caught that.
I did.
Yeah. She did.
That was quite the trick going from Kate to Elizabeth like that.
We're seamless. We're coordinated.
Impressive.
My internet wasn't working, so Kate helped out, but I seem to be back.
Well, shall I proceed? We've got a quorum. Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is the Affordable Housing Growth and Development Trust Fund Board meeting on Friday, June 2nd, being 9:02. We'll begin the meeting. I'm just looking at the call to order. Why don't I do a roll call to order? Wendy Northcross,
Present.
Mark Milne.
Here.
Andy Clyburn,
Present.
Mark Ells, yes. And Laura's not here yet, right?
She is not.
All right. Okay. I don't see anybody from the public here at this point. So we'll move from public comment on to topics for discussion. First topic for discussion is the approval of the minutes from May 5th, 2023.
So move the minutes.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? None. All right. I'll do a roll call vote. Wendy Northcross,
Yes.
Mark Milne,
Yes.
Andy Clyburn,
Yes.
Mark Ells. I'll abstain because I wasn't here. All right. Next. Trust administrators update and follow-ups. Julian.
Good morning, everyone. I have only one piece that I had to add to the memo that I circulated. My reporting on the lottery for the residents at 850 Falmouth Road. We were scheduled to hold the lottery on Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock with an in-person component. Our monitoring agent, who was in Worcester, had some difficulties with applications that were incomplete. And so she rescheduled. We did hold the lottery just to make sure that people had information. No one attended in person, and there were 8 people on the Zoom call. So the new date is June 21st. And I realize that's a bit longer than people wanted to wait for that, but that is the time that she feels she needs to certify all of the applications and move ahead. I can take any questions or relay any messages if there is anything we need to work on that. I can also report, it does appear that there are still, it was approximately 80 is what she was telling us she had. There were 36 that came in-person drop-offs, so it's a lot. I'll just proceed to the next item, which was the friends or relatives of autism or related disabilities. That's forward phase 2. Charlie McLaughlin and I have been working on the grant agreement. It is not in a final draft form for you this evening or this morning. The remaining piece is we need some information from them. We need the details in terms of the new legal name and some of the details of how they want to set that up. Any questions on? Because I know you folks had, you were concerned about conditions, and I believe I want to make sure that we address all of that.
Just a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
So Jillian, will this hold up their project?
No, they are moving along great guns with getting their financing. They have approval from all of the town community preservation funding that they have requested.
Okay.
And DHCD has approved the funding. So things are in progress. I think it really is just a situation where attorneys are very busy. So between their attorney and our attorney, that just hasn't quite, the exchange hasn't come full around.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further discussion? No, seeing none. Does that conclude your portion, Jillian?
It concludes with the exception of just, I wanted, I did not include in my memo, and I actually didn't put anything on the agenda related to the Mass Military Support Foundation, but they have been in contact with me. They're still working on primarily the issue with the ability for the trust to secure any funding that we provide to the property. So we usually take a security interest. And at the moment, they still do not have ownership interest in that property. So they're working with the property owner on that and proceeding. I believe they have reached out to an architect engineer, and they are progressing, but they don't, they have not provided anything to us at this point, other than conversation. That's
Right.
all I had at the moment, unless there were questions on any memo items.
Okay, so no further discussion. Then I'll move on to item number 3, planning and development update.
Thank you, Town Manager Els. I don't have any significant updates on the affordable housing in the affordable housing arena since our last meeting. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, is everybody privy to where you are on the housing coordinator?
Yeah, we are still hiring for a
Yeah.
housing coordinator position.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, yep.
All right,
Mark, quick question for Elizabeth.
of course.
Elizabeth, do we have like a cheat sheet or a thermometer that says this is how many housing units are in the pipeline? You know, not identifying by address or anything like that, but just you know, like when you're fundraising and you got the big thermometer and you paint it as
Yep.
money, you know, something like that. Do we
We
have
do actually. So we keep what we call a residential development report. It's posted on the housing page of the town website, and it essentially tracks the units. It tracks since 2007, only because, you know, that's really when we started seeing units come online, but also when we started keeping track. And it breaks units down in the various stages of the permitting process and includes the affordability there as well. So we can circulate that. We update it quarterly and keep it posted on the housing website.
Yeah, that'd be cool. If somebody could send us a link, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I would be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, for the record, Laura Schufelt has joined us. Hi, Laura. W-
Hi,
Go ahead. All right, Laura, I'll pause here. I don't know if you have the agenda in front of you, but we've already done Jillian's trust administrator update, and Elizabeth just did her planning and development update. So did you have any questions of any of the prior items before we move on to the next item?
No, I've been waiting in the room for a while, so
Oh,
sorry. I missed it. No, I'll catch up with Jillian if there's anything.
okay, thank you, thank you. So moving on to topic number 4, updates on development of town properties for affordable. Oh, yes,
Sure,
Ellen.
Ellen has her hand up.
Hi, good morning. Charlie McLaughlin is the phone number that you see on the screen. He was having trouble logging in.
Okay, thank you.
So he needs to be let in. Thank you.
All right. I guess we'll go back to update on development of town properties for affordable housing.
Good morning to the trust. Nothing substantial to report at this point. Since the last meeting, we've had a couple of internal meetings, but at this point, we're moving ahead on those properties as previously communicated and reflected in the minutes.
Yes, Laura.
Could you give me an update on the if the contract has been awarded for the land behind the senior center for a feasibility study or due diligence or whatever was RFP'd? Please?
Who would do
If it's all
that?
right, if it's all right, Mark, I can update on that. We issued an RFP for that proposal and we got no responses. So we are going to, I've been in touch with one consultant who did not respond to better understand the reasons why. So we're going to retool that RFP. Probably take perhaps more of the work on internally relative to outreach and retain some site planning services to move that project forward.
Yeah, the feedback I got was that the RFP was overly bureaucratic for submissions.
That's shocking for a government RFP.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. It's pretty standard. Very standard RFP. So
Wendy.
I have a quick question too. Have we, and I don't know if it's for David or for Elizabeth, but does the town have, or do we have the ability to look at what I'm going to call non-traditional sites that could be potentially developed into housing? And I'm thinking of excess parking lots that are never used even in peak shopping season, or, you know, probably privately owned, not necessarily town owned, but just places that have been disturbed but aren't used. Do you know what I mean?
I'm not sure of the question. Do we
So,
have the ability to look at that? We do, but there'd be a lot of factors in considering anything. Elizabeth, you had your hand up?
yeah. I mean, this is obviously something that we've been thinking a lot about and trying to figure out, you know, where are there sort of sites with feasibility, already developed sites with feasibility that don't have zoning to fully support residential build out. Most of these are probably covered by one of our highway business zoning, which was amended a while ago to permit residential development, but there are certain areas of town, you know, West Main Street is the big one that comes to mind, where we have a lot of underutilized property, and I think with a few minor tweaks to the zoning could probably substantially increase the potential for residential redevelopment in that area. You know, if we're talking about Route 132, you know, that's a little bit of a bigger discussion that's outside of the current bounds of our local comprehensive plan. So I'm hoping that is one of the issues that the LCPC will take up at the beginning of their next phase.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
All right. Yes, Laura.
I would just add that, you know, the trust could issue, you know, a no for looking for properties that the trust could buy. That's, or an RFP, I guess what it is, a no for. It's an RFP. And that way, because we can't go out as a public entity, we can't go out and proactively, you know, approach owners. But if we put out an RFP and owners come to us, we can then respond to that. So, you know, if we're using all CPA funds, we can go out because it's exempt from 30B if you're using CPA for acquisition. But if we use CPA for acquisition, then all the units that are built there have to meet CPA regulations, 100% AMI or below. It can't be a mixed income. So lots of trusts do that, put out an RFP, have an RFP, and then hope to get properties. And you know, some have been successful. Mammoth has been fairly successful in doing that.
But Laura, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Given that it's Cape Cod and given the market we have here, even though things have weakened a bit, do you think that's a worthwhile strategy for us?
You know, I kind of hesitated to bring it up. I just wanted to say that is an option, but it was, if, you know, if we spend all our money on acquisition, it, you know, and that's probably what would end up happening. But it is a way to be proactive, and, you know, and it may, in rising interest rates, it may be something that that could be fruitful.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, when you read nationwide in cities, certainly the real estate market has changed, but especially for apartment buildings. But you know, on Cape Cod, that really hasn't happened. So
right, and office buildings, we don't really have any.
You got it.
There are some empty buildings, and we probably could look at underutilized space and using it better. But again, it's the first step you'd have to do if you're not going to use all CPA funds is to issue an RFP just saying you're looking for properties.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions relevant to town properties for affordable housing? All right. Seeing none. Topics for future meeting agendas. Jillian, are these yours?
Well, I put them on because there are things that are going on. So that the possible partnering with the Barnstable Housing Authority. Lori Fenton had met with Elizabeth and I and was talking about parcels that the Housing Authority owns. So they are doing a review internally, I gather, of various sites that have capacity for expansion or new development. And so they had reached out. They have one in particular. I won't do the site name just yet, but they're basically exploring. And I guess what I was wondering is if there is anything that we could do as a town, as a trust. Certainly they could apply to the trust or the CPA for funding. But I didn't know if there was anything that we could do beyond that, if there was any incentive for people to work more closely with the Housing Authority or, you know, structure any sort of a separate entity that would help to review those parcels, or it's just sort of exploratory. And I guess I raise it as something that if the trust had ideas or thoughts about how they wanted to pursue with that, I just invite that if people are interested, and if you're not, we move on to other things. I mean, certainly we will continue to work with the Housing Authority as they reach to us, and that can continue.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Laura, then Andy.
As Jillian knows, I am working in my other hat with the Housing Authority on a parcel to dispose of it for a developer. The Housing Authority, as you know, is a separate entity, is a public entity, is subject to all of the public construction and other rules. It also, there are both state laws and federal laws that do not allow any additional public housing units to be added unless the Housing Authority is not getting a subsidy for them, which the Barnstable Housing Authority gets a subsidy for all the projects. So they can't expand any of their properties to add more public housing. So the only way that they can kind of develop, they don't develop, they could develop using, private money and no public subsidies, or no public housing subsidies, but they then are subject to all the public construction rules, and that adds about 40% right now. They also need the capacity to be developers to do that. So it is limiting, and they can sell their land with EHCDs, with EOHLCs, the new acronym for Secretariat, with their permission, and it has to be affordable housing. So I just wanted to lay that groundwork because there are misconceptions about what they can do and what they can't do, and partnering with the town in any kind of public agreement or whatever doesn't, and just kind of further complicates it. And that's not to say that the town can't, or the trust can't fund a development that a developer comes in and does on their land. We just, there's just a lot, it's complicated in an already complicated business.
All right, Andy.
I was just going to comment, sir. I think it's great that you had the discussion, and if you could keep those lines of communication open, perhaps we can avoid what we saw about a year ago, where Barnstable Housing Authority sold a parcel for the development of affordable housing, and then that developer came in front of our CPC committee requesting CPC funds to protect it as open space and not develop it. So clearly we're a bit fragmented that process. I don't think CPC supported it. I don't believe that moved forward. It sort of died on the vine. But clearly we want to know what BHA is doing, both the trust and the town. So thank you for doing that, Elizabeth and Jillian. I appreciate it.
All right, Jillian.
Well, I thank you. That's very good guidance, and I appreciate that. And I obviously will continue to meet with the director or the board, anything that they request, and we'll try to report back as much as I can in terms of what their plans are. And I believe they'll be working obviously with us on scoping out what they're doing, and hopefully any advance notices are helpful.
Yeah, I think it's not the first time a lack of communication resulted in some decisions that at least caused us to pause and wonder why. That's all. There were a couple of units they sold a few years ago that I don't really understand why the trust didn't grab them up, but or some entity to keep them affordable. And we just missed the opportunity. Yeah, Andy.
I was just going to follow up on that. It's worth a review if you haven't seen when Mr. Riley came to the CPC committee asking for those funds, it was a bit confusing, certainly, and I really appreciate Laura's input on what limitations the housing authority has, because what was articulated was clearly that, hey, we should be spending our CPC money, giving it to the Barnstable Housing Authority, because then they can go build great affordable housing elsewhere. So if that's not the case, an education piece, and to be honest with you, Barnstable Housing should probably educate, if they're gonna sell someone a plot of land, let them know that they're not going to take those funds and go build more subsidized housing.
All right, Laura, and then Wendy, Laura? Okay, Wendy, did you have your hand? No, okay, I'm sorry.
No, but I do think, I think there's a lot of coordination going on at the staff level, but I think it might not hurt even just to have an annual meeting with all the housing interests in the town, you know, the council's committee and us and BHA. It just seems like we've got a lot of irons in the fire, and I sit in this little zone and I don't talk to the housing authority and I don't talk to the CPC and other groups. So I think that even just once a year, just an informal, hey, what you doing, kind of a conversation, maybe in person, I don't know.
Yes, Laura?
I think also, we should look at I mean, I know the parcel in question I saw after it had been sold, that was land that the town gave to the housing authority for affordable housing. And so, you know, that's what the town warrant said when it was given. And that's how a lot of their property is. So I don't know whether, you know, maybe there's not a restriction on it, but I think for it to be sold not for affordable housing, if DHCD or if the state has a hook in it, which they have a hook in a lot of their properties, it has to be affordable housing. But we should look at all the properties that the town gave them and kind of make sure. Yeah, there was another one on the golf course in actually it's a Sandwich golf course a couple of years ago that was part of that package that before we switched from select board to town council, a whole bunch of properties went, and they went for affordable housing. So just a thought. I don't know if we have a legal hook or if it's one that wants to get it, but there's a lot of land that's like that, although a lot of it's not developed. Just
All right. Yep. Thank you. We should have further discussion internally, Elizabeth, as well on this one, because I don't know if it's the trust role or the town's role or some other collective effort. So.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot to talk about and unpack here, and this isn't an agenda item, so probably not the best place to do it.
Okay. B, possible discussion potential for future funding for buy down program.
Just to report back, there were funds in 2017 that were appropriated for the preservation of units that were being resold at prices that were no longer affordable. This has to do with the deed restrictions in those properties. They have an escalator for the price, and as the price goes up, some of them have become unaffordable. The buy down component is the opportunity for the trust or the CPA to substitute or subsidize the purchase price and put money to preserve those. The most recent one that you guys have seen was a HOP unit that had about $30,000 gap between what the deed restriction said the maximum resale price could be and what would be affordable to a person making 80% of AMI. And so that was monies that that we subsidized to preserve the affordability. And so the 2017 appropriation is coming to the bottom of its it's running low. We had one, I think we have about 35,000 left in that. And I just wanted to make sure that we don't lose an opportunity and that we replenish that if that's the board's or intent. So that in the past had been CPA funds. They were allocated to the Planning Development Department, but they could be allocated to the trust or any other method. And the trust, I believe, can participate in that buy down program if you wish to.
And these are funds, if you've given it a 2017 number, these are funds that the town administers, not the trust.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
I just wanted you to be aware that as those funds get drawn down, there isn't an automatic replenishment. And so I just want to keep it on our radar.
So yeah, essentially it would just be sort of creating that bucket. And I think we talked, Jillian, that when the trust originally issued its NOFA, they did create that bucket. So I think it's just, making sure that we validate that that funding is available through the trust for administration.
Laura,
I think that we should allocate it and have it within the, if we're allocating, that's fine, but I think the administration, it shouldn't have to come back to the trust to be voted again if we allocate it to the planning department and it should just take a sign off from Mark, or however you do it within the town to sign off on it. It's pretty straightforward. It's not really there's no negotiation about what the number is. The number is the number. So I would just take the bureaucracy out and just have the planning department, allocate the money so that it's sitting there for when the planning department needs it to buy down, send a letter to Mark and have it signed off on, or whoever, and then do it. Mark Milne, you may have a different opinion, but it just seems like that it should be an easy process and shouldn't be tied up with coming to the trust.
Mark, what is this money and what's the role of the trust in the money?
This is an older CP, Community Preservation Committee appropriation prior
Yep.
to the creation of the trust. So we have no role in the expenditure of those funds.
Okay,
But they will, it sounds like, expire soon based upon, a potential buy down that's out there, leaving the town no funding for that type of program. So we would have to go back to the CPC for another appropriation to keep this group out of such a program, or we could use the funding that we have for such a program. But as Laura mentioned, it's more bureaucracy by having us do it.
okay, thank you. Yeah, to me, it would be if we run out of money, we look at the source of the money and who holds the authority over the money, and we decide whether we're gonna, based on the merits of the request more.
Right.
So I'm confused on the trust versus the town here, but I think I got it now. Okay, I have one for thought, and it's definitely for future, but not far. We're going into our strategic planning in August. And Elizabeth Jenkins, this question is for you, and then certainly beyond you to any and all of us. But we have a priority in our strategic plan of housing. It's typical of a strategic plan, goal and priority type statement. Is there anything that we should, as the trust, carry through your town manager, carry through to the town council? And the question is also for you, Elizabeth, because you administer our housing program in the town, but I can talk with you about that separate. The trust, is there anything I should carry to that strategic planning that would help us as we move forward with what we do in trying to support affordable housing. So, I mean, our opportunity for the next 2 years is coming up in August. So just, I guess, take a look at the strategic plan. I'm very interested in, you might say, oh, no, it's great, and it generally addresses everything. Or you might say, you know what, Mark? These are targeted areas that we need to be clear on. They're not objectives, they're goals, so they're broad, but that's absolutely where the opportunity is in the next 2 years. Okay, just take a look, and then we can put it on the agenda and chat, and then Elizabeth or I can carry that. It's typically Andy, Mark, and I who attend the strategic planning. So I certainly, or Andy, can carry that into those discussions. Wouldn't surprise me, though, if I have Elizabeth. I've had DPW in schools there. So housing is of such a priority and complexity that I really think I need, my director there with me. So. Anyway,
Yeah, we can
thank you.
chat and bring it back to the trust. It'd be great to get member feedback on that, certainly around some of the things that I think Laura was alluding to around some of the more proactive powers of the trust. If we were going to exercise those, certainly having that aligned with council priorities would be an excellent foundation.
Yeah, I'm really interested too in, kind of melding, Elizabeth, what you do, which is very, boots on the ground here, though it's also comprehensive with what Laura sees statewide, and see if there's, especially where money might be going, where's the opportunities, and, cut some of that so-called bureaucracy out and get us to some more housing units. That's all. Okay, thank you. All right. Any matters not reasonably anticipated? I guess I asked myself as chair that question. I don't have any. Anybody else? Laura?
It's probably for the former agenda item.
Yeah.
I did a presentation to the Barnstable County Home Consortium on local preference. It may or may not be, translatable to this committee. But I'm happy to share it. I'm happy to share the PowerPoint. And it's really just the rules and regs. If anyone's interested, or if you just want Jillian to send it to everyone, that's fine. But a lot of times when developers are going for funding from the town, the first thing the town says is, well, we want it to help our residents. So it was, I think it was helpful to give the presentation to the home consortium so they could, the 15 members could understand what the rules are around it. There's
Great. Yeah, please share it, Laura.
Could I just comment? I did see the presentation, and I do feel it is very helpful, if nothing else, just as a reference for folks. Should the topic ever come up and you want to know more about it, Laura's presentation was very informative.
Okay. All right. So there are, at this time, I don't believe there are any matters not reasonably anticipated. Yes, Laura, please.
Sorry, I'm just going to make a plug. June 14th is the Virtual Housing Institute, and June 15th is the In-Person Housing Institute. It's training sessions that I run annually. In person is in Devon, so it's not always easy for folks to get to, but the first time will be in person in 4 years. The virtual is free, and the in-person is $50 if you're a volunteer or staff member and the town doesn't want to pay for it. We do have scholarships out, so you don't have to pay. So if any member is interested, you can either contact me or just go on our website and you find how to register. I don't know if I would love to have that sent to the housing committee as well. I don't know if they're aware of it, but it's especially helpful. The in-person is really hands-on training. The virtual is more policy. But the virtual day also has how to count units from inclusionary zoning. So
So,
important.
so Laura, can I ask you a question on that? then?
Sure.
Somebody like me or Andy, is that really, is it time well spent? Are we kind of saying, am I deferring this to Elizabeth, and then Elizabeth can say, Mark, this is who should participate?
I think it's more on that level. As a trust member, you might, it would be informative. But it's typically volunteers and planning
Okay.
staff.
Thank you. Yep.
Jillian?
So I'll do that. I'll defer to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you get the info, and whomever you think should participate, please proceed. Okay.
Will do, thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay. Next meeting is July 7th, 2023 at 9 a.m. I will share with you that I may not be here that day. So Andy, you will be chair if you are here, okay?
Sir.
We'll let you know if I'm in North Carolina or not. All right. Okay. Seeing no further business, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
second. Thank you. Roll call. Wendy Northcross,
Yes.
Laura Schufeld,
Yes.
Mark Milne,
Yes.
Andy Clyburn,
Yes.
Mark Ells, yes. Thank you all.
Bye.